And we're going to fire it up in just a second. What up, everybody? Sorry for dropping out yesterday. My Streamlabs decided to take a big dump. I don't know, restarted my machine and everything and started working again. Anyways, special event tonight. I finished one of my satellite antennas. I've been working on it hard all weekend. And we're going to listen for some satellites in just a little bit. We got one that's about to come over the horizon. I've got this thing pointed up. And we're going to see how it comes in. I tested about a half hour ago, and it seemed pretty promising, so we'll see what we can see here. It's this XW2F satellite here. Been busting ass all weekend to get this built up and ready. It's still 11 degrees below the horizon. Moves fast, though. And you'll see the display on my radio changing. And that's actually because I've got frequency control on. So my satellite tracking program figures out the exact Doppler shift for a particular frequency and then tunes my radio to that. So hopefully it'll work out well. Sorry, I couldn't wait to crack the PBR. I'm sure we'll have another one in a little bit, but we have here in the first hour we have at least 3 good satellite passes. There's 4 over 90 minutes. So we're gonna watch these things zip by one at a time and then try to grab them. I'm gonna go ahead and bring the radio audio in here. There we go. All the frequencies for these satellites. These are a series of there were 6. Marvel, what are you doing? Anyways, let me pull my monitor up and I'll show real quick. There we go. So they all operate on slightly different frequencies, so I've got to keep this up so I know where to start out with for each one at least. Just below the horizon. I think 6:31 past the hour. It's 90 seconds to go. Hopefully we'll start hearing something. Just double check and make sure I had the right stuff punched in here. Turn the preamp on, try to get a little gain. There we go, it's officially above the horizon. My antenna's only 13 feet up, so it doesn't even really clear the metal buildings that are both my house and the tire shop next door. It'll be up about 7 feet higher when I'm got it finally installed, but let's see what it does. Hey, you know what would help? If I hook the antenna up. Just realized that at the last moment. Not hearing anything yet. Now we should be good. There it is. That's the beacon of the satellite. Just lets you know who it is and if you can hear it or not, basically. Oh yeah, that's real good. And then this has a voice transponder that people can talk on, and it's between 980 and 146. Blasting in. Alright. Switch to upper sideband, and then spin around that band. See if we can hear anybody. Oh, I gotta take it off tracking for this.
Whiskey, Quebec.
There it is.
CQXW2F and standing by. CQXW2F, Whiskey Bravo 4. Foxtrot, Whiskey, Quebec, Whiskey, Bravo, 4. CQXW2F and bye.
So there's somebody trying to get a contact. You hear the big thumps, that's me spinning the antenna rotator, trying to track it.
W2F, CQXW2F. Whiskey Bravo 4, Foxtrot, Whiskey, Quebec, Whiskey Bravo 4, Foxtrot, Whiskey, Quebec, CQXW2F, and standing by.
There's somebody trying to make a CW contact. The beacon's coming in really well now. You can hear the tone correcting once a second as my radio retunes. Trying to fight the Doppler shift, basically. It keeps it reasonably well locked. Pointed to like 80 degrees right now, leading it just a little bit. Surprised at how well it's doing that high up. Cool. Don't do that. A lot of hands you gotta twiddle here. That's actually the data stream. These have a low bandwidth data stream. Just telemetry. Not many people on this one. Yeah, we'll get into that in between passes. I built up a circular polarization 10 element Yagi. It's currently on a pole about 13 feet up in my backyard on a rotator. There's that beacon again. You hear the Doppler dropping as the satellite's moving away from you now. Slept on my antenna. Point that thing straight north, see what we can do for the rest of the pass. Just going back and forth between 980 and 1000 basically. It's a 20 kilohertz wide transponder, so everything it hears in a 20 kilohertz wide band, on another ham band, it just retransmits. Let's just ride that beacon as this one goes down, and then I think about 8 minutes or so, we got another satellite that we can try. And it's going to have a very similar pass. There we go. It's getting pretty low. There's a big building in the way, too. And I'm using like 50 feet of shitty coax in between my radio and the antenna. This is a complete like lash up. Like it's literally tied to a chain link fence with a piece of rope to hold it up right now. Curious to see how it'll do on the tail end here. Tighten the filters up there. Losing it a little bit. I can still barely hear it though. Alright. I think that's about it. Give everybody's ears a break for a minute here. And we're going to move on to the next satellite. So these are known as the XW satellites. There are 5 of them still up, like I mentioned. Basically they got released about 10 minutes apart when they were launched. In the same orbit, but a few minutes apart. And the idea was to kind of have a little mini constellation. So that's why they're kind of all in line here. Over time, their orbits have changed slightly and they've spread out a little bit, but they still have the same basic orbit. So they're about 15-20 minutes apart at this point. So let's see. Let me rerun my predictions and make sure the timestamps are accurate for when the next one is going to show up. Fun times. I love this shit. This is my favorite thing. Literally my favorite ham thing. Okay, we're moving on to XW2 Delta now. And when that shows up on the horizon, it's going to look like that. At its highest spot, it's going to look like that. And then when it leaves, it's going to be like that. So we're actually going to be starting about 180 degrees. I'm going to go ahead and start my rotator turning now, because it takes about 30 seconds. And then we're going to rotate this from south through west to north. That pass, we went south through east to north. But since they're slightly offset, they're basically splitting the difference on Denver right now. So you gotta kind of be agile with this stuff and figure out the best way to approach it. Alright, I'm at about 170 degrees here. That lines up with when that one will show up at 6:23 local. It's currently 6:18. Woo! Starting off the Zcast with a bang. Again, sorry I missed it yesterday. Streamlabs took a dump and had a very, very busy weekend. Not just the antenna stuff, but IRL stuff. Tax season is upon us, so I've been having to deal with that, which sucks. I hate it. But powering through. It's all good. It's all good. So, thanks for those of you that did hop on tonight. Appreciate you dropping in on the makeup sesh. So I was really excited to have some good passes here. These aren't FM satellites, so they're a little bit less interesting. You need a little bit more technical skill to operate these, and most importantly, they require much more expensive radios. So they have fewer users. The upside of these is that they're very efficient. Since they're linear transponders, they take a little snapshot of a spectrum and just retransmit that on another band. You can have multiple conversations on one at the same time, and people can be like talking in single sideband, and somebody else can be using Morse code, and so on and so forth. It's really exciting, really entertaining. I don't need to be on 60 meters. I need to be tracking that one. There we go. We'll get there. Just a couple more minutes for XW2 Delta, and we'll see how we pick up that one. That one's a little bit farther west. Maybe we'll get some California people trying to operate, since there are so freaking many hams in California. But yeah, got my super vintage rotator box here. That's the thing that's making the big thunks. And then my ICOM 746 that we're using to receive tonight. There you go. Now I can actually see the screen of the radio, not just looking at camera. This has been a long, big project. I still have to figure out the rotator controller, get my feed lines made up. We got some big, thick coax. It's about as thick as my thumb that I need to run up the pole and all that. It's a big project, but getting that 2-meter antenna done was very, very big part of it. Let me pull up a picture of the antenna real quick while we're waiting next couple minutes. This is, where's my main monitor? I need to get one of those button boxes, the stream control-y thingy. Turn off Orbitron. There we go. So that's what it looks like right now. So it's two Yagi antennas. One of them is 20 1/4 inches ahead of each other, of the other one on the mast, and they're rotated 90 degrees. And I have a little cable harness made up here to feed both of them, which gives me circular polarization. It's neither horizontal nor vertical. It is both at the same time. And that's the best thing for satellites, because satellites are always tumbling in space. So that helps it resist fading. So that's the setup. It's on a 3-foot wood dowel sticking up out of the rotator right now, just to have a non-conductive mast kind of in play there, and that's mounted to a 10-foot chunk of chain link fence top rail. That's just strapped to my actual chain link fence with a rope. Like I said, it's literally a lash up job here, but yeah. So that's what the antenna looks like. You can tell this one is 20 inches ahead of that one. So that's the antenna setup we're trying to use to receive, and I believe it's 623. Let's take a look and see. A couple more seconds and this should be on. I'll bring the radio back in. And XW2 Delta's beacon is 145.855. Hey, it's already set up. Beautiful. So hopefully we should hear it pretty quickly. It's above the horizon now. I hear him. And that's the next satellite in our little marching line of microsats flying across the sky. Pounding him. That's loud as hell for a satellite. Cool. So we know that's working. We got us a bird. And wait, with levels here, XW2 Delta is 860 to 880. We want to tune. No idea what that is. That sounds like an interference signal. It's definitely on the satellite. This is probably local interference on the uplink band. It sounds like some power line controller telemetry or something like that. And I bet the satellite's hearing that and inadvertently retransmitting it. It doesn't discriminate. If you shoot RF on the passband and it can hear you, it will retransmit whatever beeps, boops, noises, or hollers you generate. But I know it's on the satellite because it has that Doppler shift. Not hearing any actual people yet. So that's the digital telemetry data. It's blasting through. Hey, Clutch. Nice of you to join us. We're playing with some satellites tonight. That is blasting in now. The antenna is... I'll pull it up again. Working on my 2-meter Yagi setup for this. So that's literally what it looks like out back. It's just on a pole. Doesn't even really clear that building there or my house, but it seems to be working a lot better than any other antenna that I've tried for the satellites. So. You can hear the Doppler just flying by, because it's not on auto-tune here. Now it'll track the frequency of the beacon signal. And spin my antenna 20 or 30 degrees. And it sounds like it's going up in pitch, but it's actually going down because of the way that this radio receives CW. Chase it with the rotator a little bit. Oh, don't do that. It's a weird bug of how the tracking program operates. It wants to put it on a memory channel. I'll fix that. So 860 to 880. There's that telemetry signal again. Just blasting strong. It's louder than the beacon. Nobody talking on this one. Let's go back and just chase the beacon until this one goes, and then maybe we'll have better luck on the next one, because there's another one coming through 38, so about 8 minutes from now. We got really good copy on the beacon though, so the satellite's definitely working, the antenna's working great. You notice how there's very little like fading going on. That's because of the circular polarization on the antenna. That's why I built it, because it's satellite's tumbling and it just has a little quarter wave whip sticking out the side of the satellite. So it'll be horizontal and vertical and then dead on. It doesn't have any control over it really. You know, it's a 10 centimeter square cube. So having a circularly polarized antenna, which is both horizontal and vertical at the same time, means that you don't get fade outs when you're misaligned. Really, really good signal strength, though. I'm really happy with how loud that's coming in. Sadly, in this session, I don't think we're going to have any FM satellites, which are way easier to listen to. There is one SO50 here, but the downlink for that is on the other band that we use for satellites, so this antenna won't work there. There's another pass of some of these. Yeah, AO92 at 8:53 local time. So like 2.5 hours till that shows up. Right now it's, yeah, doing that. I screwed that up again. Selected radio 1. Thank you. This thing gets a little eager about trying to auto-tune stuff. Alright, now we're pointed straight north, and that's where it will stay. We'll see how well I can hear this one as it goes down. In 10 degrees, 11 degrees right now. Once I get this 10 feet higher in the air and have good coax cable rather than crappy RG8X going to it, it's going to be pretty amazing, gotta say. Really looking forward to it. Let's see if it'll ID one more round. Yeah, it's starting to go. I've got to bump the volume. At the very end of it there. I think that's about it. Not bad. Down to 2 degrees, which, I mean, there's trees and buildings higher than that, so this is really pulling a hell of a lot of signal. So that's super cool. All right, so moving right along, radio break for a second, and let's take a look for the next one. This is XW2 Charlie, and this one is going to be pretty much the same. So I'm gonna turn this back down to about 190 degrees bearing. Start out there. Maybe do 200. This antenna is fairly broad. It has about a 60-degree beam width, which is how far in front of it it can listen. So I don't have to be too precise with the rotator, but I definitely want to kind of nail it down. This is 145.79. Awesome. Okay, so that's all keyed in, and we'll get the radio tuning here. Cool. And in 2 minutes, we'll hear yet another one, and we'll tune around and see if anybody's talking on that one. It's been such a crazy weekend that I just have a 6-pack in a plastic bag next to me. That's what kind of chaos we're dealing with. Who's ready for the ASMR beer crack? Y'all ready? PBR. Oh, yeah. Alright. Coming right up over Arizona and Utah and some such there. Really surprised there's not more voice activity on these, but it's how it goes sometimes. You know, like I said, only the most hardcore of the satellite nerds, which satellite nerds are a subset of ham radio, which is a nerdy thing, you know, like in itself. And the transponder geeks are like 10% of maybe all the people that talk on satellites. Um, so there's maybe like 50 or 60 in the whole like U.S. that operate these satellites regularly. But right before I started the stream, I heard on one of the other XW satellites like 5 different people talking at once. It was really badass. Could clearly hold a conversation with them if I was set up with my transmit antenna and stuff like that properly. So, very excited that this whole project appears to be coming together very, very well. All right, we're only 2 degrees below the horizon right now. And let this thing zoom up over our head. I'm really working my rotator out. Hope it's doing okay out there. Seems to be fine. 1.5. There we go. And it's up. Come on, where'd it go? There it is. So about 3 degrees above the horizon, I can pick it up. That's healthy. This one's causing some ruckus. Alright, and this one is... Which one are we on? I lost track. Good God. XW2 Charlie. That is 795 to 815. So let's go up there. Hit that. There's the digital data stream from this one. There's the beacon. See if anybody's talking. Barely in there.
November 7, November, Echo Victor, Delta Mike 43. CQ satellite, this is November 7, November, Echo Victor. November, Echo Victor, Delta Mike 43.
That guy's not Doppler correcting properly. He's not changing his transmit frequency as he's talking. It's kind of annoying.
CQ satellite, this is November 7, November, Echo Victor. November 7, November, Echo Victor, Delta Mike 43. CQ satellite, CQ satellite, November 7, Echo Victor, Delta Mike 43.
I'm chasing his radio right now because he's not tuning properly. It's okay.
CQ satellite, this is November 7, November, Echo Victor. November 7, November, Echo Victor, Delta Mike 43.
Crank that thing over.
CQ satellite, this is November 7, November, Echo Victor. November 7, November, Echo Victor, Delta Mike 43.
Some interference there. I think that's local. Yeah.
Victor Echo 7, Charlie Echo Whiskey. This is November 7, November Echo Victor. Good evening from Delta Mike 43. Delta Mike 43. Good evening from Charlie November 89. Hope you're having a good night. Yes, so you're Charlie November 89. Yeah, doing all right here. Here at Arizona. My name is James. Juliet Alpha, Mike Echo Sierra. Juliet Alpha, Mike Echo Sierra, James. Hi, James. The name here is Chris out of Abbotsford, British Columbia. You're 5 to 9. You still have a great signal into the bird.
Some one guy's in Arizona, one's in British Columbia. There you go. That's why we do satellites.
Yeah, I'm keeping up with you. I can follow you around a little bit here. I'm also manually tuning, so that's I'll bounce around
Called it.
as well. But you're making it nice into the satellite as well, so that makes it easy. That sounds good. I'm glad I'm not losing you. Anyway, I'll say 73, and I'll see us move on down the passband and maybe try another call. Yes, Chris, nice to talk to you. Sure we worked before, but probably just on the FM sats anyway. So, yeah, I'm getting close to LOS anyway here. So 73, thanks for the contact. VE7CEW17 NEV 73. Have a good evening.
So that's N7NEV and VE7CEW having a contact on the XW2C satellite. Magic. It's fucking magic, y'all. I love it. See if anybody else is on. before we lose it. I gotta spin my antenna more.
Victor Echo 7, Charlie Echo Whiskey. Victor Echo 7, Charlie Echo Whiskey. Echo 7, Charlie Echo Whiskey. Victor Echo 7, Charlie Echo Whiskey. Calling CQ.
See, these are chill. There's so much room for conversations. We could have like 6 conversations on the satellite at the same time. And we just heard one conversation. They're vastly underutilized, is what I'm trying to get at. And that whole conversation was while this thing was pointing at the roof of my house, which is metal. It's not even taller than my roof. So this antenna is doing really, really well. Let's just track that beacon again. So yeah, that's your introduction to linear transponder satellites. They're fairly magical, fairly amazing. Let's see if any other passes are up here. I always like to do a fresh prediction because it gets all the finished ones off the list here. Old single-threaded app, probably written in Pascal or some shit. This hasn't been updated in like 12 years. Don't care. One more. XW2B. About 15 minutes. Don't do that. Okay. And this one is farther west. This one's going like over the California coast. It'd be like a direct overhead pass for anybody in like San Francisco or anything like that. We're starting out at 200 degrees. I'll go like 225 to start. We'll do one more round and then, yeah. So, I'm having a real good time here. Hope y'all are enjoying this and kind of getting an idea of what's involved, all of the multiple hands you have to have. If you want to actually have voice conversations, you got to do the computer control on both radios, both your uplink and your downlink, because as the satellite approaches you, say you're transmitting on 436.0 megahertz, because it's moving towards you, it's going to hear you on 436.03 or 003. Like you're going to be about 3 to 5 kilohertz high. But then it's going to transmit, and it's basically inverted to whether you have to tune low or high for uplink and downlink Doppler, and then as soon as it passes the nearest approach and starts to move away from you, that flips. And it's so hard to tune 2 radios and spin a rotator, maybe 2 rotators for, bearing and the elevation, and hit push to talk and write it down in the logbook. So that's why I'm trying to automate as much of this as possible, so I can basically just click on a satellite and then start talking. So that's the whole game here. So we actually have 10 or 15 minutes. I'm going to take 5 of those minutes for a real quick break because I did kind of start this out whiplash. So let me cut radio audio and the Matty Zcast special Sunday satellite edition. We'll be back in just a few minutes. And we're bringing it back. Stage 2 of the special Sunday satellite smorgasbord. I can't think of any more S words. Yeah. Thanks y'all for joining me. This is a lot of fun. I'm really excited about all this. Sorry that I'm all disheveled and filthy and stuff, but I've been outside in the mud putting antennas up. I had to figure out rotator cable for this. I tried a length of I had 4-conductor phone cable because the rotator needs 4 wires, and I was like, I'll try this. So I cut 50 feet off and tried it. Wouldn't spin, so I needed heavier wire for it. So I ended up had a spare 50-foot extension cord. So I chopped the ends off of that, use that for 3 of the wires, and then the last wire is just a position sensor. It doesn't carry much current, so I use the phone cord for that. So I have this rat's nest of wires up there. You can kind of see, back up. You can see here the 2 wires going into the rotator there, and then my coax feed is just kind of dangling down, and it goes all the way to the end of it, so that it kind of droops down behind the antenna, so it doesn't mess up the pattern quite as much. But yeah, I'm proud of how well this is working out. This is kind of a gamble, because these antennas, it doesn't look like this normally. There's just one set of 5 elements, but I bought 2 of them and then combined them into one antenna. So that was a big experiment, and from what it seems to be working just fucking gangbusters. So maybe I do have a bit of theory knowledge. Fun stuff. Let's go ahead and set up for our next one here. And that's going to be XW2 Bravo. And the beacon for this is 145.725. And then the transponder is on .730 to 750. Oh, looks like I've tried this one before. I already had it punched in. Super cool. And that is going to be, again, down there, 225 or so. Cool. We're all set up, and let that come over the horizon. It's currently just past Easter Island, it looks like. These things are so lonely. They spend so much time over ocean where nobody's talking on them. I'd really like to hear if there was some way to get, like, because the orbit is like between 98 and 100 minutes on all these. So I'd really like to hear just a continuous hour and a half or whatever recording of what the satellite's hearing as it goes, over the poles, and, does a different lap every time. Let me see if I can get a little animation of what a polar orbit looks like so you can kind of visualize it here. Yeah, this works. So this is what a polar orbit does. They launch it and just aim it straight north or south. So every time that it goes around, it covers a different slice of the Earth vertically. So certain periods of the day, there's no satellites in the sky, or they stagger out over time. They try to spread them out so that at any given time you're not more than a few minutes away from a satellite pass. But sometimes they just kind of, due to orbital periods and stuff, they just kind of have dead spots. So there might be a 4-hour period or whatever where there's no satellites over you. You can take a break, go to work, whatever. But yeah, that's how they launch all these. Polar orbits are super useful for this because they maximize coverage to population. There's other satellites that are closer to like a inclined equatorial orbit, and they never get above like 20 or 30 degrees positive or negative latitude. So like for like people in Southeast Asia, those are really good because they can hit those almost all the time. But if you're farther north or farther south, you'll never hear those satellites. And then of course that taken to an extreme is when you have a geosynchronous satellite, which is something like this. It's way out there, and it's on the same plane as our equator. But if those aren't above you, you'll never get one because it's in sync with a certain spot on the ground. There's a geosynchronous ham satellite over the eastern hemisphere of the world. It's somewhere over like Africa, I believe, like East Africa. So like everybody in Europe, everybody in Africa, most people in like Southwest Asia, India can hit it. but I will never be able to hear it from here in Colorado. It's on the other side of the planet, which is kind of sad. I wish we had one on our half of the planet too. Eventually that may happen. We'll see. So we'll just chug right along. We got about 4 minutes left. 3 minutes. 2 minutes. All right, it's coming right up. I'm at 2:25. The dotted line here is the gray line, so that's nautical sunset or whatever, and then sunrise over here. Yeah, you can see. I'll put the geosynchronous one up momentarily. There it is. SIL2. It's right on the equator, and it's over like Central Africa. So if you go there, that's the territory that it covers. So if you're outside of that, you'll never be able to work on that satellite. But it's excellent for anybody who wants to talk here. So I mean, somebody in South Africa could talk to somebody in Finland on that satellite very easily, which I think is just badass. And it's 24/7. It's always in the same spot in the sky. So let's go back to our little XW2B. Let's go in CW and try to grab that beacon. Tune our radio. All right, here we go. I'll leave it on there. Clear that out though. That's just like a fine-tuning control. Lets me turn it up and down a little bit. Bring some audio in there. I think this is the last one for a while. I don't know how late I'm gonna go tonight. I really just wanted to hop on and show the satellites off and kind of let people see what the experience is of at least receiving them. This SO50 pass here, it's so low. Like the max elevation is only 1.5 degrees. It's not even really worth trying for. And then the next one is XW2A on its next pass, which is right around an hour and a half pass. So we may hang around, see if we can snipe a couple of those. Oh. And 2B is above the horizon. And only about 225. Should be picking it up any minute now. There it is. Again, right around 2.5 degrees, I start to hear it. Yeah, there's a lot of wind up there in space. That's solar wind. Yeah. All these are really well built. The Chinese did a great job putting these up. Yeah. Oh, it's still trying to auto track. There it is. And then transponder for this is 730 to 750. So I'll turn off tracking here. Spin the antenna a little bit. This is the kind of shit that an SDR is absolutely critical for. You get that waterfall up, and you can just see if somebody keys up, and you can instantly tune to their frequency, rather than going back and forth with a knob. Beacon still good. Nobody talking. Thought I heard something. That's local interference. I can tell because the pitch is not changing. It really sucks when you have some RFI in one of these bands. So you're like every time, ooh, what's that? What's that? Nothing. Beacon's still coming in good. Nobody wants to play on this one. Might be a little bit too far west. Oh. I hear somebody. Come on, where you at? Beacon is really strong, so we know we're still able to receive the satellite very well. There just ain't nobody talking on it. Yeah, I think they may be hanging out around there somewhere. I think you're right. Yeah, that was kind of a weird pulsating thing there. I'm not sure what was going on. Now it's pointing at my neighbor's house, who have a bunch of shitty electronics in there. That's why the noise level is higher here. You learn things about your neighbors when you play radio. See if noise blanket will do anything. No. And I just aim this kind of north to calibrate it. So I might be 10 or 20 degrees off. After we get the final thing set up, we're going to have a magnetometer up there. So we're going to know to like 1/10 of a degree which way we're pointing. It's kind of a bust here. It's gonna... What's interesting between these 5 or 6 satellites that were all launched at once is that you can tell their base frequency have drifted apart slightly from one another. Because in theory, they put out like 1,000 hertz tone on one certain frequency. So as we've gone through the different ones, I've had to use my fine tuning to kind of change the pitch on each one, because over time, these are about 3 or 4 years old. The oscillators have slightly drifted, so they're not exactly on frequency. You can't exactly do anything about that. Once it's launched, you can't touch it. I think that's about all she wrote for XW2 Bravo. Bye, little satellite cluster. You were fun to fuck with. But then, coming up, we got one more shot. About a half hour. Or no, not that one. Yeah. XW2A is going to come back around, and that was actually the first one we heard. So it's made a whole orbit around the Earth. So that kind of shows you the orbital period of stuff. We'll go ahead and just kind of pre-tune to that. XW2A is 145.66. Groovy. Cool. So that's just, we'll kill the radio there. Go back to just chill mode. It's really fun to put this on turbo simulation mode. So this kind of shows you, so this is 5 minutes of elapsed time in between every update here. It kind of shows how they're all in polar orbits. We're currently tracking XW2A, so that's why the lines are on there. The middle line is its current orbit, and then the previous orbit and the next orbit. So you can see how they all just kind of cover slightly different parts of the Earth each pass, and some are like headed northbound, and some are headed southbound, and that switches every 12 hours. So if you have northbound passes, like say like right now, right around 6 a.m. or so, this is my local time, but we would see all the XW satellites moving southbound. These satellites are going to have some good passes at 1 a.m., but nobody will be on, sadly. I wish there were more like night owl satellite hams, because nobody gets on these things at like 2 or 3 in the morning. They're super dead. Yeah, Fox 1B is coming right overhead at 2 in the morning. That should be great. So if anybody is extremely nocturnal and wants to get into ham satellites, I'll get you on the air, and we'll because you could have a few minutes of chit chat then. You know, as it currently is during the daylight, like prime times. You know, you just exchange call signs and your grid square, which is your basic location. It's a 1 by 2 degree slice of the Earth's surface. You just collect grid squares. So you just exchange your square and say, okay, thanks for the contact. But man, if you get on these things, yeah, see, there we go, about 6 a.m. or something, all these birds are going to come back down, and they're going to be on southbound passes. So I'd start out north and then head south. So this is kind of how things look with these particular satellites. These are all the ones that you can talk on, basically. I've got the 5 XW satellites here, and then I've got SO50. This thing's old as hell. It's been up there for like 11 years or so. Nobody expected it to live that long. It's kind of hard to work, but it's still up. And then Fox 1B and Fox 1D are the other 2 really popular satellites, and those are very easy to pick up. You can actually work those if you're out in the clear, like in a park or something. You can just use a handheld radio with the stock antenna and probably land some contacts. But yeah, so that's what the simulation looks like, as these things kind of march across the sky, you know, so you can kind of visualize the Earth turning like underneath these, and these are all basically follow the Terminator. They follow the gray line, so they're not changing their position relative to like the Earth and Sun, but the Earth is spinning underneath them. So that's why you can get a different kind of footprint every time, and the green line is the footprint. That's whatever it's above the horizon for. It's really cool when it's up by the poles, because it gets all big and fat. But this is a shitty Mercator projection, which is the worst map projection. But whatever, it works for this. So, anyways, go back to real time, and XW2A is right over Tierra del Fuego, and coming up across the western coast of South America. It's weird to like think like how farther east South America is than we are. It's kind of crazy. Like I think like this like bit here is only like a couple hours behind UTC, if I recall. So we'll hang out for a few more, and then go for that 2A pass. Get one more shot at people talking, and that's right over the eastern half of the U.S. and North America, so maybe we'll hear some more people on there. That would be cool. That would be super fun. So, yeah, welcome to my little satellite stream. I guess I could spend a little bit of time melting everybody's brains with how we get 2 antennas to work as one. Let me bust out some MS Paint here, because the MS Paint feature on this stream is always fun, right? So, say you have an antenna. This is my antenna here. And we're going to use red for these elements. Beautiful antenna. These ones in the back are a little bit longer. So this is a side view, we'll say. Kind of a oblique view. And the feed line goes in. Nope, I don't want that. The feed line feeds this element here. And then, oh my god, what the hell is that? Oh, right, that stupid tool. Here, I just want this. There we go. And let's say we have a second set of elements that are at right angles to this. Now, these are offset a little bit. They're spaced the same as these, so they're just shifted. And pretend that one of these are vertical and one are horizontal. There we go. I need black to extend my master. Cool. So the red ones are pointing straight up and down, and then the blue ones are pointed horizontal. So this is how we generate circular polarization, which I was talking about. That helps like combat fading and stuff. You heard like the signal level didn't really rapidly change when you're using just one of these, either the red or blue. It's called linear polarization. It's what your car antenna does. It's what TV antennas have. It's what the FM antenna on your car has. It's either horizontal or it's vertical. As a result, when the other antenna is 90 degrees offset from it, you have a big deep fade, because they don't work very well when they're at 90 degrees angles relative to each other. Let me get another thing here. So these two antennas are 20.5 inches apart on the boom. So the vertical one on mine is 20.5 inches forward for this element, and this one relative to this one, and this one relative to this one, so on and so forth. So that's what generates the circular polarization. The problem comes when you have to feed both of them at the same time. And what you want to do is feed these what's called in phase. There are two different ways to generate circular polarization. One is to have both of these element pairs, both the horizontal and the vertical, at the same spot, and you feed them 90 degrees out of phase with different length feed lines. The other way, which I picked, is to just move one of them 20 inches closer to the satellite, basically, and then feed them with signals that are in phase. So say you have two antennas, and that's 50 ohms. That's 50 ohms. Well, we have a problem then, right? Because when we combine these, the law of resistances applies. And you have 25 ohms here. Because 50 divided by 2, that's the simplest thing for like two equal resistances in parallel, will equal 25 ohms. So what you do in that case is there's a special property of any sort of coax cable or any sort of feed line, and that is, let me pull it up. It's called a quarter wave transformer, and let me see if I can find the right equation quickly. Getting in a little bit of math time here. Nope. All right. I'm gonna just type it out. So, ZF is the impedance of the transformer. ZI is impedance from radio. And ZO, impedance to antennas. So, at this point, we have 25 ohms right in this little spot here. At the far end of this, we want 50 ohms to the radio. Is that right? Yeah. So what I've done is, instead of having 25 ohms there, I'm watching my clock here for that satellite pass. So these are 50 at the feed point. And what I've done, let me pick a fancy color here. Green? Sure. That's a quarter wave, 75 ohm coax. And that's a quarter wave of 75 ohm coax. So what happens here is that you start out at 50 ohms on one end, and the 75 ohm coax changes each of those to 100 at the far end. And that way, at this exact spot, that's your 50 ohms. And that is what gives it a good match to the radio. So the equation for that is ZF equals the square root ZI times ZO. And you may recognize that as also being a geometric mean. So ZF equals square root 50 times 100. Square root of 5,000. And then you look at 5,000, and the square root is actually 70.7. But that's close enough to 75 ohm coax that there's not any real difference for anything but the most demanding applications. So that's how we calculate what impedance this needs to be. And I happen to have some chunks of 75 ohm coax floating around the shack here. So I just made up two chunks. They're like 18 inches long each, and each one goes to one of the different antennas. And then they transform that to a higher impedance, and then we parallel those two, and then we have a perfect 50 ohm feed to our radio. And it actually ended up being a really good match. Like I can on the radio here. Let's take a look and see what it says. Take off tracking for a second. Just go to the experimental band that I can spam out on. Sure. And you can see here that it's nearly a perfect 1-to-1 SWR right in the satellite band, because the SWR is the bottom graph here. It's not even lit up. So yeah, this is an extremely good match to the radio. The radio is very happy, and everything works great. So we have two antennas fed with equal amounts of power, in phase. So the plus peaks on both antennas are happening at the same instant. However, one of them is 20 inches behind the others, which is 1/4 wavelength at 2 meters, which is this band. So as a result, as the wave is transmitted, it literally has this spinning action. It like combines vectors. So you have like this corkscrew action that happens. So it goes horizontal, vertical, horizontal, vertical, and vertical every like 1/4 wavelength. or like every duration of that. So like 500 million times a second or whatever. And so it doesn't care if the satellite is horizontal or if it's vertical, as it's tumbling, and its a little stick antenna is like spinning and changing orientation relative to my ground station. I don't care, because I can pick all of those orientations up equally well. So yeah, that's why I've worked so hard to get this circularly polarized antenna set up. It can't even tilt up and down yet. It can just spin. But so far, I've had great luck with spinning it around and grabbing some of these satellites. Let's see, time check here. 7 minutes to go. Super cool. So yeah, that's how I built this thing up, and kind of why I wanted to spend the effort on putting 2 antennas on one boom and cutting these special coax sections to like millimeter accuracy and stuff like that, and a bunch of soldering, a bunch of crimping and all that. So far it's working out very, very well, and I'm very happy with it. So it's good because you can buy these ready to go. Yeah, this is fun shit. I can go buy a slightly longer version of one of these from a company called M Squared or M2. But look at the price on that thing. It's $400. Mine was, I bought 2 identical antennas at $70 a piece. Still have some leftover parts because I didn't use all the parts from both of them. And then a few hours of labor and just a little bit of ingenuity. So I got over a 50% discount over a commercially made antenna for this purpose. And that's why we homebrew stuff. Building stuff DIY isn't always a cheaper play in this game. Sometimes it's way more expensive to build your own. Like, nobody wants to build their own ham radio. I mean, everybody wants to. Once you get down to it and you realize, oh, I've got to buy $5,000 of test equipment to make this. Oh, I've got to, order all these parts and pay like $20 shipping for each one for this and that. Yeah, exactly that. You know what's up. It ends up not being any cheaper. You learn, which is cool, and that's super helpful and super nice. But don't expect to get into ham radio cheap by building your own gear until you get to a certain level. I've got my antenna analyzers that I can use to measure these antennas and see if they're resonant and see if they're tuned up right. And I've spent a bunch of time learning the math and learning the equations and stuff like that. So it's almost like after you've invested in getting all that knowledge under your belt, then it starts to become good. But the investment is very high up front. So it's usually better to just buy off the shelf stuff up to a certain point, and then it's a lot better to build your own stuff, because you can build like 1,000-watt amplifier for like $350 or $400 if you want. And they're very simple. The schematics are just fuck off simple. Like, there's like 8 parts in a 1,000-watt amp, but you have to basically have a metalworking shop, and you have to know how to cool a giant 1,000-watt tube, and you have to be comfortable with dealing with a transformer that's outputting 3,600 volts at 300 milliamps and stuff like that, which absolutely will kill you if you hit the wrong thing. So yeah, it's a weird path through this hobby. Everybody thinks like, I just want to, kind of build my own crap and stuff like that. Not in your first year or even your first 5 years. Buy some gear that somebody else has spent all the engineering work on, and get on the air, have fun, talk to people, and then as you start to explore different facets of radio, that's when you're like, I wonder if I can just build a preamp a little bit cheaper. And starting out, like, you'd be like, oh god, I've got to buy a spectrum analyzer, this is $600, this sucks. But if you're going to make 10 things with it, then it only costs $60 per project. And then as you build up your shop and build up your prototyping tools and get a cabinet full of transistors of different types and stuff like that, that's when the cost of building the stuff starts to go down. the clock ticks on. XW2A is right over, is it like Guatemala? Looks like. Let's get this radio back on. Alright. Tune it back up. And double check my 145.66. And then the linear is from 665 to 685. That works. All right. Oh, I gotta spin my antenna. This one is definitely going to be east of me, so I'm going to start out southeast. And if you want a little bit of... That's what the rotator sounds and looks like. Now we're pointed at about 160 degrees, where I want to start out at. It's a noisy one right there. Living in this kind of semi-urban neighborhood, there's just a lot of RFI, and you can really hear it as you spin it around. There's peaks and there's quiet spots and stuff like that. There we go. Oh, no, that's SO50. That's a different satellite. Let's go for one more pass. Oh, yeah. There we go. A little bit of zoom. Alright. Now it's above the horizon. Let's listen in for that beacon. Adjust the filters on the radio. This is a pretty low pass. It's only going to go 11 degrees up. We may have less luck here. I can barely hear it in there. It's really weak. We're aimed directly at the tire shop next to me. And they have compressors and shit running like all the time, so... In a couple weeks, this will be up on a 20-foot pole, and it'll be clear of everything, and it'll play even nicer. Definitely in there now. It's a little stronger right here. Unfortunately, it's almost at its highest point. We're only going up to like 11.5 degrees here. So it sounds like around 8 degrees is what I need in order to have a good signal looking east. And also, basically, I'm pointed right at downtown Denver right now. So just in general, it's hard to grab stuff. Yeah, listen to that downtown raging. RFI sucks, y'all. Yeah, these passes are really low. These next ones coming up. So basically that means that I've got a break from my satellites for a few hours. Next one looks to be XW2A because it's here. It's pretty low, but the next pass here, that's gonna be the next pass, is gonna be pretty good. But it's about 9 o'clock. I think I'm gonna wrap it up here, close to the top of the hour. Yeah, right now there are 3 satellites visible. So there's a lot of them up there, and sometimes they kind of, show up at the same time, and it's kind of fun. You got to pick one and then kind of run with it. There have been a couple of calculated close, like, near misses, too, where some of these have come within, like, 5 kilometers of one another, which in space, that's, like, basically, like, incredibly close, and they get freaked out. I don't think any have actually collided. Not like ham satellites, anyways. I know, like, in general, satellites have hit each other up there. Like huge, like, Powerball lottery type occasion. But satellites have collided and just they, obviously obliterate each other because they're moving so freaking fast. Yeah, this satellite is moving 7.647 kilometers per second. So it's moving 5 miles a second in its orbit. That's fast, y'all. That's super speedy. That's why there's so much Doppler. Yeah, little XW2A is going to fade out here in a little bit. It's okay. It really makes you appreciate the ability to hop on. Like, that's why I love working from home, is because I can just, hey guys, I'm AFK for 20 minutes and hop on and work a satellite. Yeah, had a lunch break, totally. But it lets me really kind of not structure my day around this, but find time in the day where there's an interesting satellite pass where I can hop on and, at least listen, maybe work somebody. I mean, I've talked to, like, probably 50 or 60 people on satellites before, but it's been very difficult. I've had 2 radios that I had to tune back and forth, and used either a shitty antenna and I wasn't heard very well, or I had a good antenna and I was having to manually rotate things. And that's why we're going to automate this stuff. We're going to just have a turnkey station. We just click the satellite and start talking, and that'll be a lot more fun, I think. Yeah, XW2A is faded out. I'm going to go ahead and cut it. So, well, cool. I'm glad y'all shared this with me. It was a blast. I got some leftover Thai food in there that I've been thinking about in the past few minutes. So as much as I love rocking it with everybody, that was pretty much the reason that I came on tonight, was to show y'all some satellite stuff. And like I said, there's going to be a big dead period here for about the next 2 to 3 hours. So that's going to be a good time for me to get some food in my belly, and maybe do some laundry. That would be good. Clean clothes are always good, especially since I got my pants filthy because I was like tromping around in the mud and dealing with all those aluminum antennas. Like, you never realize how much aluminum oxide stains things and like just makes this dark gray gunk on everything. It freaking sucks. Oh my gosh, it's kind of hard to wash out of clothes and stuff. So I'm kind of filthy today, but I'm tired and happy. Because I got that awesome antenna setup. I'm super stoked. Eh, that knife looks hideous, dude. So that's a nicer shot from earlier with a little bit of sunlight. You can really zoom in and see the feed points on everything. This is just when I was testing it, not on the rotator. So yeah, it's good fun. And I run it in an X. It doesn't matter how you orient things on these circular antennas, because they receive equally in all polarizations. So then the only constraint then is kind of environment. And the reason that mine is in an X is for weather resistance. Ice and rain and freezing rain and snow will drip off both sides here, versus the other way where you have some elements totally horizontal. Those are going to collect ice and ice up. This will pretty much let it run off in both directions. So that's why I have it as an X. That's the only reason. Also, it looks cooler, not going to lie. My neighbors were like, "What the hell is that?" I was like, "I'm going to talk to people in space on this." And they're like, "Holy shit, that's awesome." They think I'm like the weirdo radio guy, but I'm not, right? Totally sane. You can see my other... That's my big 40-meter antenna there, the very top of it. And then that's my 20-meter antenna right there, the pipe next to it. Because the perspective, it looks like stuff's jammed in really tight here. It's not as tight as it looks, but that's 29 feet in the air. So, yeah. Thanks everybody for hanging out with me. I'm going to go ahead and call it. We had a blast hearing some beep boops from the little space boxes. And as the spring progresses on, we're going to start talking on them, and we're going to have more automatic control. Oh yeah, one more thing before I go. My rotator controller needed a box, needed a big box, because this is the big heavy power transformer for it. This thing's like seriously like 5 pounds. It's solid iron. And I found the perfect box. Look at this cutie. Look at this wonderful little box. All metal. It's got vents. It's got a nice front and back. It's got feet. Got that off of Amazon for like 20 bucks or so. So I'm going to start chopping this up soon. Put the little LCD and a bunch of switches on it and a power jack and start filling it with guts. So I'm very happy with the little case I got. And put it right on top of the radios there when we're done. So, yeah. Yeah. Isn't it nice? UXCell. UXCELL, I believe, is the company. But they have a bunch of different sizes of them. And they're like front to back ambidextrous. There's no front or rear of this. Yeah. Yeah, I thought about just putting this in like an old ATX case or something like that. Or like a rather ATX power supply case, which I've done with so much shit before. I've put like antenna tuners and small CW transmitters, and I always use whatever dead-ass power supply I have and just rip the guts out and use that for a chassis. But yeah, I decided to get the very nice little blue box that looks kind of test equipment-y. And what'll be nice is like there's screws for the front and rear panels. So what I can do is I can do a mock-up with a piece of cardboard and just screw a piece of cardboard in here and cut out exactly where I want the LCD panel and the switches and the knobs and all that. And then I can just take that out and use it as a template. And that way I don't screw up these actual nice metal panels when I do my cutting and dremeling. So that'll be nice. So good angle for like prototyping and getting things set up before we actually, tie a ribbon on it. So, yeah, thanks everybody for hanging out. Let's go ahead and call it for the Sunday satellite spectacular smorgasbord here on the Matty Zcast. Appreciate you hopping on, and I'm glad I could share some of my little random beep boops. Now you have a notion of what I'm talking about when I'm freaking out about the ham satellites and stuff. And then hopefully on a future session we will be able to talk on the FM satellites and check those out. Those are a lot easier to use than these transponder satellites. These are kind of advanced tech, but there's some other birds up there that are way easier to play with. So we'll do an intro to them. Hopefully one of the next couple upcoming streams will have some good passes for those. So yeah, thanks everybody for this. Oh yeah, it was post time change too, so everybody's all thrown off. So double thanks to everybody for hanging out for sure, because I know that everybody's just wiped out and their schedule's kind of fucked up right now. So thank you again for hanging out with me and having fun. We will be back Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central. That will be, hang on, 1 a.m. GMT Wednesday, because we're -6 now here in Denver. So yeah, I'm Matty Z. This is the Matty Zcast signing off. Everybody have a great night, and we will see you in a couple days. Bye.